everyone. So topic number 4 is most important, I think, in organizations to be effective, and people underplay that. And I've worked in organizations where if there was an issue, they do reorganize, and they never really got to, what was the problem? It was sort of like, well, we're going to fix the one problem we have today, and 6 months later, we'd be back in the same position where things weren't working. And then what would they do? They'd reorganize. And I'm going to be talking about form, which is, structure, follows function, why you're doing things, how you're doing things. So form follows function is a rule that I learned many, many years ago, and it still applies. So that's where I'm going to take you today. And again, I want to remind you that whatever's highlighted or bolded, or there's a golden key somewhere, that means that's something that's pretty important on the test. Okay, so we'll start from there, but any questions before I get started at all? Any questions? Okay, we're all ready to go. Want to give me some thumbs up? Okay, Carl, were you just going to ask a question, or? Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, so you can see just right on the front page, there's different types of structures for different kinds of reasons. And and I've talked about this before. Sometimes it depends on the industry that you're in. Sometimes it depends on the business that you're running. Sometimes it depends on the environment that you're running in. And sometimes it depends on the type of people, experts, or just straight workers that you have. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples as we go through. And in modern day, a lot of it is what we call network structure. And why is because we have all the tools, the digital tools to bind us so that they can pick up what they call the white spaces and work through those white spaces. And it allows people to work in different time zones and, in different countries and different organizations for that matter. And what you do on a network structure is most of the time you're hiring the best of the best to be able to get something done. So that's some of the reasons why we're doing this. So we'll get into what's going on. Chapter 5, of the E-Text, the Fundamentals of Management, organizational structure, has a lot of really good information on it. And again, there's a link right here that you can go to on my Google Docs, but also that it's in Blackboard as well. When you go weekly commentary, whatever, so that you'll be able to see that. Let me just, just so I show that. Oops, let's do that. Here. Okay, so here's this. Where are we here now? Topic weekly commentary. So if you click on that, and again, we're going to go down to topic 4, and you can see that the PowerPoint is here, and it's rich in information and will really help you on the test. So, I'm giving you that information right away. And then also what I want to point out too, now that I'm on Blackboard, is that, okay, I went to topic 4, and I know my screen is a little bit different than your student screen, but as you go down, and you keep going down here, keep going down, and then what you will see is practice tests. And there's 3 different practice tests with the solutions. And what I recommend you to do is go through these practice tests for test number 1, which will be Wednesday, February the 5th, and not to just think that, well, if I go through all the practice tests, I'll be ready. No, it's basically to give you a sense of what kind of questions will be asked. There won't be any identical questions that got pulled out of here on the test, but they'll be fairly similar, and it'll really give you a good idea of what's going on. Okay. And again, if you have any questions, email me, and I'd be happy to put the answers on so your cohorts can can share in the answers as well and get the insights. Okay. So that's where that is. Any questions about practice tests at all? We're all good? Okay, I see we got a really good compliment tonight, which is really good. So again, this chapter 5, really important. And what I did was I placed the actual objectives. So we're going to talk about, and tonight, we're going to talk about the 6 key elements of organizational structure. And we're going to talk about the factors that affect organizational structure. And that's just as important as the organizational structure itself. What's driving that? We're going to talk about different components of those factors. And then we're going to look at some common organizational designs and talk about some challenges. All right. But before that, let's take a look at, what you have to do for week number 4. And you'll see that there's 3 surveys to do. All right. And again, here I mentioned the practice tests. So they're on there, to be able to do that. And then we're going to get into the participation activities, and both of them are group team exercises. And here, this one here, the first one in 4A, identify, one influence for a good and one for a bad of an organization. What could go wrong? So here I've given you, how to do that, and that's based on the organization that you have chosen, your team has chosen, to work in participation 3A. All right, in topic 3. So that's why that's really key. Is that that's why I try to get you to really pick a good company and look at specifically what's going on. And again, because of 4B, you need to come up with a structure, for that. And I guess, reading organizational structure and design, in chapter 5 will help you as well. And what you're going to do is create an organizational structure chart for your business choice that you did in 3A. All right. So that's where this all comes to fruition in terms of, try to understand that. And again, here are some of the aspects of structure. So I want you to comment after we go through this webinar. I'm hoping that you understand what I'm asking you for. So we're going to comment on the organization's degree of centralization. I'll define that in the slides that are up and coming, and comment on the organization's degree of specialization. And again, back to critical thinking. What I want you to do is, make an assertion. This is what the degree of centralization is for this particular company that we chosen. So it might be Kim's pizza, pizzeria. So why did you say it's that degree of centralization? What impact does it have? And that's when we're getting to critical thinking. I don't want an essay, but I really want you to kind of lay out, make your assertion, and then now validate or substantiate your assertion. That's what I'm looking for, right? So one is comment on the organization's degree of centralization, comment on the organization's degree of specialization, and then describe how those jobs are formally divided. And remember, I asked you to, pick a company that has at least 5, if not more, employees, so that you'd have a little more juice to work with in getting your answer. Right? Okay. So yeah, you can see that I put that. So any questions about the 2 participation activities? And again, they're group team exercises, and I see that all but maybe one group has finished their team charter, so you should be in a good position to be able to work together. Okay, any questions at all? Yeah, I'm looking at the, all right, so go ahead and unmute, Mohammed, and ask the question.
No, sir, I wanted to react. By mistake, I raised hand.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, so if there's no questions, then I'll start getting into it, right? So I talked about the test. And again, here's a slide that I created, and let me just put this in the current slide here. Okay, so here's a slide that I created to really, and I think I've covered this maybe once before in the introduction to the course, but essentially, for studying for this test number 1, the main piece is the commentary presentation, or the PowerPoint presentation. And that's what we're on right now. We're on, topic 4, commentary presentation. And then the next piece that's really important is you can see that there's 3 different PowerPoint decks, related to, topics 1, 2, and 4. And so that, going through this will really give you some rich information on what's going on. Then it's time to go to topic 4 and find those practice tests and try a few. And then review what you've done from participation activities, because those will give you a hint as well, what's important for studying. And then you go to the slide deck inside of each topic, and those slide decks are like 70 to 130 slides. And where I've highlighted in the commentaries, go to those slides and get more information on what's going on. And then if you want additional information, then there's the topic, video presentations, and then there's actually the reading and the course e-text that you have access to, right? And again, the test is accessed on topic 5, not topic 4. So that's where you're going to find the test. And, I've kind of repeated myself a few times, but I find that some students somehow didn't get the message, and it's test time, and I get a frantic email, where's the test? Right? So it's on Blackboard. You're going to do it remotely, and you'll find it on topic 5. And this is what the posting looks like. Okay. So I covered this, but let's go through that again. So it's going to be 50 multiple choice and true and false questions. Probably, I don't think there's more than 9 true or false. The rest are all multiple choice. You have 80 minutes to do that. You find it in topic 5. And then also there won't be any calculations to be made. So you don't have to worry about bringing a calculator. And I've given you essentially all day and evening to be able to get that test done. So I will open that test up. So, if you go there before 8 a.m. on February the 5th, you won't see the test posted. But after 8 a.m., the post will appear, and then you can get into that test all the way until 11 p.m. on the evening of February the 5th. Now, here's the thing, is that you're going to need the lockdown browser, and your webcam needs to be working for that. And what I recommend is test it before you're going to start the test, because that's when you have a problem, and that's when I can't help you. And really, if you do have a problem, do that soon. And I even do it this week. If you want to find out what's going on. And the whole idea too is that if you go to Blackboard, you'll see lockdown browser in the navigation panel on the left, and click into that. It gives you all kinds of information. The best bet is go to the library, and they'll help you. All right. And so that understand what this is all about, I'm going to put this announcement and a little more information on Blackboard announcements, either tonight or tomorrow morning, and you'll see what's going on. But when all else fails, what you do is, you clear your you clear your cache and you reboot, and chances are you'll get back on. Yeah, that's where we'll go with that. So any questions about that? We're all good? Okay, a couple of thumbs up. Let me know that I can go ahead. Okay. All right, good. Here. Try to fix my screen. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So here's what I've learned over my career about organizational structure, right? Function, that's a combination of understanding your organization's value proposition. And I'm going to keep coming back to that. I showed you what a value proposition, I believe, last week. And really, it's what you're offering your customer that has value, all right? And the strategy of your organization, of how you're going to go to market with that value proposition, how you're going to get there, and what you're going to do about that, and then your business model. So that's what function is all about, all right? You never get the ultimate organizational structure right the first time. It takes a learning organization, to understand, that you have to change, based on what you're learning, based on what your strategy was and what you're learning from the market, Henry Mentzberg is a professor at let me see, this is a McGill University in Montreal. He's a guru on organizational design, and he's a guru on strategic planning. And there's a link here that you can go to that link and find out a lot more. All right. But, if you're ever stuck, and what he talks about is that, you have the strategy that comes out, and then you have this learn strategy, as you interpret what's going on, and you reorganize to meet that learn strategy. And then that's really what gives you competitive advantage, in a big way. Okay. So here's the framework that I put together, and this is after, years of doing strategic planning and whatever. And, every organization has a vision and mission and goals and objectives. But what I found though is the value proposition, is the early seeds of the strategy itself. The way that you put the value proposition together is basically what's important to you, and where are you going to focus, and that kind of sets the tone for the overall strategy. And then the strategy is all about the competitive advantage that you're going to get out of doing things a certain way. And then the business model allows you to execute on that strategy. Why am I telling all this? Because, this is basically, the function that, you need to understand. So when you come to organize, you organize based on this function, and that helps you. Right. And if you want to know a little bit about, the learning organization, Peter Senge, the fifth discipline, and now I'm telling you my age, this came out in 1990, but Peter Senge is probably the best author, the expert around what a learning organization is. And, and when I'm doing consulting, I'll tell my clients, I would rather that we come together and we put through, a half-baked plan with an organization that can learn and modify that plan as we go, than rather having a perfect plan and not having the capabilities to understand the marketplace and adjust and be flexible and respond to the market, and then organize and change your strategy accordingly. Or let's start with change your strategy first and then organize accordingly. Okay. All right. Why am I talking to you about the value proposition? Because we're going to be talking about the ideal customer. I think it's in topic 8. And if you understand the value proposition, you'll have a better sense of how to put together a better ideal customer. And oh, by the way, that's another question that will be in your project, assignment number 4. So if you do a really good job in the team, in the team submission on ideal customer, you're going to have your template and everything just set up to be able to, to do it for Amazon, right? This is the Mintzberg model in terms of how things change. Well, you have an intended strategy, and then you start learning stuff. And then as you learn the market and whatever, you come out with a realized strategy, and then you tweak your organization accordingly, right? Okay, and then this is what the business model is all about. I'm not going to talk about that too much tonight, but we're gonna cover that off in a few other places. But the key message tonight is form follows function. So figure out, why you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, before you decide to organize to do it. All right. And that will put you on a really good platform to be able to effectively address execution. And oh, by the way, execution is probably the most significant problem of organizations, in business. They have a great plan, they have great talent, but they just never put it together from an organizational point of view and a criteria point of view in terms of priorities to be able to do it, and to get it done. All right. So that's what's so important. Okay. So form, still follows function even in the digital world. All right. And the thing, it's unlikely to function optimally for a specific purpose. I mean, the opposite doesn't work. Right. And that's why, so if you've got a network organization, you better really understand, what are the critical success factors of this entity to be able to have competitive advantage. And then you organize that network structure accordingly. So, that's for one example that I'll take. Okay, let's just go back to, assignment number 2. It's going to be done in February, or due February the 12th. But what I'm helping you to so that you get a great mark is that there's articles to read to really set the context and to give you a lot of that information. And that's the first Google Docs that you click into. But then the next document is a table that I put together to show you, how the Rebel surveys connect to theories and the theorists, right? And that's key because, you're going to be, you're really doing a baseline, and you need to understand, why did I do all these surveys? What's it telling me? and then bring that to fruition inside of your responses, in assignment 2. But the next one is a document, and I called it, document 3, connecting theorists, tools, and techniques. So when you say, and I think I covered a little bit of this on the announcement, that, okay, well, what type of a manager are you? Well, you don't just say, well, yeah, well, I'd like to get things done, and I work well with people. No, but what's the the definition of the type of manager that you are, and what term is that? So you might say, well, yeah, I'm a democratic style of a manager, and this is why. Okay, so you mentioned that, because that's the title that I want you to work from. I want you to give me the nomenclature, and then you go to this document, Connecting Theorists, and you say, oh, okay, well, for a democratic type style manager, which theorists really kind of talked about that and what theories came out of that. And you identify, and I think that's in 3B, you identify, 1B, you identify, yes, theorists, Frederick Taylor had, particular theory of measurement, and that made me more of a bureaucratic manager or something like that. All right. So I want you to connect that and show me that you've read these things and you're making sense out of all the information I've given you to achieve that that assignment number 2. All right. All right. So I always try to give you like helpful hints, hopefully. All right. So this is Coach Gary trying to, give you some stuff that, I would have liked to have when I was going through college, some insights. And what I read in this article is that if you want to better understand something, take your notes by hand, not always just sticking them in your digital, device. Writing by hand carries significant benefits because, it connects, the neurons in your brain, to remember things much better. All right. So neuroscience says simple habit boosts brain connectivity, learning, and memory by just writing things down. And, I still have these particular books that I had from my engineering day where I wrote just about everything down during the day that I did, who I talked to, and it's been helping me for a long time. Okay, so that's that one. All right, just a little bit more about, Lockdown Browser. This is where this Lockdown Browser information is, especially if you have a Chromebook. The system is not fully adapted to Chromebook, so there's other things that you have to consider. So if you're going to use a Chromebook on that test, you better test what you need to do in terms of lockdown and webcam, and figure out, what could go wrong with that. So there's more information you can read about there. Okay, talked about this. This is what the the thing is going to look like. So any questions again so far? Any questions at all? We're all good? Keep on moving? Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Okay, so again, I wanted to kind of, and I'm hoping that I can influence you into adopting this way of thinking around triple bottom line, right? And if anybody's curious, I've got a full presentation about triple bottom line that I could share with you if you like. But it's all about, especially like back in the 70s, it was all about profit. And it didn't matter how you made that profit. And that's how people were rewarded. So it skewed everything. And what was happening is that customers weren't being happy and societies weren't being happy. And there was a lot of environmental things that could have gone right. And people said, oh, hang on, let's take a look at everything. And let's be good ancestors. So when you're going to make a decision, or when you're going to organize, you're going to organize such that, you have to make profit. And now that's called prosperity, because if the organization doesn't make profit, you won't exist. But you start thinking about not only the employees, but society that you're going to affect, and then what you're going to do to the planet. And it's been said, by 2050, the way consumerism is going, there's going to be 3 Earths that are going to be needed for all the things that drive consumerism. Well, sorry to tell you, but there's only still going to be 1 Earth. So that's what sustainability is all about. So the key to sustainability is this triple bottom line. All right. So I'll keep coming back about that. But again, here, there's, if you click on this presentation, you'll be able to review the Harvard Business Review article and find out more about it. Okay, so the facts. So it's a transformation framework, all right? So it's more regenerative, more sustainable. And again, it offers tools that help organizations measure and, benchmark. And we're going to talk about benchmarking in this course. And benchmarking is really looking out there to see what's best in class. And it may not even be in your industry, but it's a particular function that you have in your organization. And somebody's doing it the best way. And you go out and study, what works, for them. And then you see if that's applicable. And if it's applicable, then you bring that best, that practice, best practice into your organization and implement it. Okay. So, so the thing is, triple bottom line illustrates, the full cost of doing business. And you're going to learn, in economics, what externalities are. And triple bottom line takes care of, a lot of those externalities to make sure that you're not a drain on society or the environment. Okay, considers all stakeholders. And this ties in, and again, this will be in later topics. We're going to talk about corporate social responsibility. And if you're a triple bottom line organization, you already have inherently built in a mechanism to be a good, corporate social responsible corporation. Okay. All right. I'm going to go through that. And then even in ethical investment stocks, there's stocks out there that do things, where the companies do right, and investors will flock to those investments because of the sustainability factors that they bring to society. Okay, and then ethical investments. You're going to see this term ESG all over the place, and this ESG term is going to be more important when AI starts making decisions for humans. And that's where you come in with the critical thinking. You'll be able to make sure that you understand, what environmental factors are being considered and what the social factors are being considered, and then what the governance factors are being considered. And governance factors is how organizations responsibly, govern the operations through a board, through an executive, and then on different levels of management. Okay, not going to talk about that. All right. So again, it's all about becoming good ancestors and the urgency of long-term thinking. And you're already seeing this. I mean, if you just watch the television show, The Nature of Things, and find out, what's going on with, even like my wife and I watched this one episode last night about coastal communities and how, and the water, the sea levels keep rising now at a more of a geometrical rate than just a straight line rate because of, all the things that are coming together. And we need to understand this because, it's something like 800 million people could be displaced in the next 50 years because of losing, coastal communities, right? So it's here, right? So start paying attention to the environment. It brings out slower, longer term imaginative thinking about choices we're making for ourselves and our future generations. And just one more thing about being good ancestors. If you look at most Aboriginal cultures, most First Nation cultures, they have this 7 generations view of making decisions. and specifically I read about the Iroquois nation in Eastern North America, where the elders would get together and look at a key decision, and they would go forward 7 generations to make sure that the decision that they made would be good enough for that 7th generation. So they were closer, to the land and than anybody at that time. All right. Okay. I'm not going to talk about that, but here's where the triple bottom line brings in what I talked about, the evolution of management principles, where we're going to have to go, from expertise to be able to go to now empathy and trust. All right. And the thing is, with all this stuff going on, you've got to care, but you also have to show that you're trustworthy, because people are losing, around the world, are losing trust in establishment organizations, and that's going to create even more chaos. So those are the kind of things to worry about. So here's a real cool professor, out of I think she's out of one of the California universities, Rita McGrath. Read about what she has to say about the next level of where we're going in management principles. And again, here we are, economic, social, environmental, and this is what it's all about. Okay, so, and this is where you find sustainability is where these all meet. And this is what we want you to do when you leave here. You're the leaders of tomorrow, and make those decisions that are going to be responsible. And guess what? Even a small decision in the right direction is going to help us than not making any decisions at all. So just think of it that way as well. Okay, any questions at all? That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Okay, we're going to talk about organizational charts, and there's different types, and these are the most common types, and hierarchical, and that's traditional organizations, and there's a need for that, because of risk and loss of property and life, so it's not it's just not unusual to say, oh, well, a police service, that's a hierarchical structure, because they need tight control and they need to be responsible and there's too much at stake. Then there's the functional structure, and what a functional structure is basically like accounting or whatever. So it's a specialization inside, and what you can do in a specialized structure is really develop competence, and that's key, in main areas. The matrix structure is a really a great structure, but what it is that it, like this might be a project, and I'll show you one later on, but there's different, say, departments that send representatives into that one project, and what it is that this person, say, on this one project has 2 bosses, all right? So that's where the dilemma starts. It's that thing about having 2 masters. So there gets to be some conflict if it's not part of the culture and it's understood that this is the way things are going to work. And I've been in some really good matrix organizations and some really bad ones. And the good ones were exceptional, and we got a lot done. And the bad ones, a lot of bickering and a lot of self-interest going on, and not really getting to the outcomes that we intended to get to. Right? The divisional structure, that's when things get so big. Like Procter and Gamble is a really good example of, they've got a health division, and they've got a different types of divisions that are, specialize in particular product lines, right? Network structure, I talked about. The horizontal flat structure is basically a lot of, entrepreneurs, and they start an organization, and that's where it starts, and then a team-based structure, and we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, again, in 4B, to be able to create a structure like this. And please don't send in a hand-drawn submission. Do it on even PowerPoint or whatever. And again, you can go to SmartDraw and use it for free, to be able to do some stuff. And the more information that you put on here, so you can see that here you not only have the person's name but the title, so you can see how the different titles come together in that organization. All right, so that's and again, so there's a part, in that structure and layout that is born out of operations and production management, and so that layout is more of a, it's more of a production operations function, but layout is really part of the organizational structure as well. And that's key, so that, especially if you're going to be in a manufacturing area, or, you're producing something, or assembly, layout is key. And it's funny, I'll tell you a story that, I was at an open forum, at the college, and I happened to sit at a table where all the hospitality people were sitting. And one person was talking about, he worked in this organization where he was a chef, and the coolers were downstairs, and they kept like all their sauces and that. And lo and behold, you get something, and having to bring that upstairs, and they'd be slopping all over the stairs, and the stairs would get slippery, and it was dangerous. So, just the way that the layout would be, give you more productivity wise, to get something done and be more effective, and create better and, high quality product and services, right? So understand what process layout versus product layout really means. See that this is highlighted. So this is an important concept to understand. And a process layout, that's where similar items are grouped together. It's ideal for companies that perform custom work. All right, so you'll have you'll have all the the wood cutting of if you're putting together chairs, all in one area. So that's a process layout. A product layout is where equipment, tools, and machines are located according to how a product is made. So it's sequential. All right. Okay. So you can see here, in this particular drawing, you have in terms of process, if it's a really flexible job, well, this is appliance repair, so chances are that would be a process layout, right? But if you've got water purification, if you're purifying water, well, it's all in the sequential production of collecting and filtering and that kind of thing, and you're more into a product layout going there. So that's what this chart tries to show you. And here, don't get lost in all the confusion here, but there's impacts of different organizational structure. So there's a fixed. What a fixed is, okay, you've got a jet plane, you can't move a jet plane down an assembly line. So everything comes, to the jet plane to be assembled. So that's fixed. A process, well, then now, you've got it moving from, sequence to sequence. And then sometimes you have what they call a cellular, and really there's, a cell that does sort of complementary work. And one of the biggest advantages on cellular is that you can train each one of these individuals to do all different 3 jobs. So if one person leaves, they can cover, kind of thing. And then the product, as I talked about, in terms of this is more of an assembly line and a conveyor as it goes through. So layout should be put together. Put together the people and the processes that collaborate the most. Okay, that's really how it goes. So fixed position, again, you can see, that there's a patient in an operating room. Everything is brought to the operating room, but complicating factors, right? Limited space, different materials are required. A lot of planning has to go in. The volume of materials needed, needs to be, you can't run out of blood or whatever, right? And those kind of things. Here's one on the process oriented, where you're going from table saws to the drill presses to move on, and then the cellular, this is where you kind of combine. This is a horseshoe type of cellular, or a U shape, so that you can have people that can help each other as well as they produce. So again, what we're doing is we're talking about factors affecting organizational behavior, right? So what you want is you want a fully motivated, safe, and ergonomically assisted workforce where they're going to be on their best game. And so you do that, the factors of affecting that organizational behavior are the people, in terms of training or whatever, the structure of the organization, the environment that they're working in, in which particular industry or what kind of business, or what's happening at a certain time in the business, like COVID, right? And then the technology that you're using, so organizational design, it's a process of developing and changing the organization structure around helping, the rest of this happen. Okay. All right. So now we're still, and look at, there's a gold key here. So we're looking at the degree of centralization depends on behavior patterns. So people with more authority require less communication to make decisions, right? So that when you determine centrality by the number of contacts and what goes between different people and the closeness, but it depends on what you're looking for in terms of how centralized this is going to be. So the thing is, if some part can be manufactured in another area and then just assembled, well, you don't need to have that part manufacturing right in the whole of the organization. It can be it could be outside, and those people can make some of their own decisions because it won't affect the overall production of what you're trying to do in the overall assembly, right? So that's that would depend on that would give you a sense of how centralized the overall production would look like. So what is organizational structure, right? And again, that's very highlighted, right? So backbone of all operating procedures and workflows. So it's not just people placed in a particular office or whatever. It's how their information gets to them. What kind of procedures they have. That's all part of organizational structure. And so a clear structure allows every team member to be involved. And here's a statistic for you, all right? Only 9% of North American workers really understand, the impact that their job is on the overall outcomes of the organization, the overall strategy of the organization. And so when you have a clear structure, including the information, keeping them informed, keeping them all trained, and showing them, what the impact of their work is, that's all part of the organizational structure, right? And to do that, you need to consider, the type of business, how big is that business, what's the production cycle? Is it a year production? Is it a 5-minute production? What are the goals, and what is the company trying to do? What do they want to focus on to bring the best value from their value proposition, to the market, right? And that's all driven, by organizational structure. So this is how it all comes together. And then in your day and age, it'll be even more important connecting triple bottom line to that, right? And understand, the creative thinking process. And here's a a progression, for the creative thinking process. Well, then you prepare, and then what you do is you give your ideas a space where you take a look at how that works, and then you see that it works. So that's your illumination, and then you go out and say, hey, okay, now I'm going to verify that. Maybe I'll put it in a test market to see what's going on. I mean, this is where I talk about Peterborough being a test market for Procter and Gamble. They have a fancy carbon added toothpaste, and they've done the preparation. They've looked back and they said, oh, okay, yeah, we understand how this is coming together. And then they had a few ahas. Okay, they restructured it, and now they're putting it out in the market to really see what's going on. And again, I keep reminding you, all right, form follows function. So here's an example for that. The design of the building. Well, you got to know what you're going to use it for before you design the building, right? you got to know, why it's being all to be, put together. What are you really trying to achieve with the customer? What's the critical success factors involved in delivering, to the outcomes of the customer requirements. And then, oh, okay, now I know how to put this design of the building together to have the people in the right places and be more efficient and effective and happy, to do the job. All right. So again, I said there was different things that we are going to cover, from chapter 5 and in the e-text for Robbins. So there's the common types of organizational structures, and I kind of went through that. We're going to go through that a little more in detail, but there's the basic elements, and this is key. This is just as important as the structure that you chose, and let's look at this. So organizational structure determines the role of each employee in a business hierarchy, task allocation, business procedures, reporting structure, performance, aligned to drive the business outcomes. So it's everything coming together when we're talking about organizational structure. And these 6 areas, are going to be important to you for test number 1. You really need to understand what work specialization is, what departmentation is, what chain of command, span of control, centralized versus decentralized organizations, and formalization. So, I'm going to cover that again in these slides, and I hope I can get through most of this in the remaining time. Okay, so you can see that departmentalization is underlined here, so it's probably a little more important than the rest of them, right? But these are the elements. We talked about that. All right, we're going to define them now. So work specialization, it defines how responsibilities are split between employees based on job descriptions. So you look on the, in the assembly line, on the auto, there's one person that just installs brakes. And why? Because, number one, it's got that sequence that it needs to go into, but just installing brakes, there's competence that gets developed and a whole science around making that whole operation, that function, effective and efficient. All right. And that's why you do that. So it's used to split projects in smaller work activities and assign digestible tracks. But sometimes, you get into improper specialization and you get into, employee boredom. And, you have to look at that, all those aspects, of where do the returns of work specialization start tapering off to be able to get to that optimum design of work specialization. Okay, now chain of command is important, okay? And it's a system of passing instructions and reporting. So if you take a look at the CEO, so Samantha reports to the CEO in the chain of command, and Ricky reports to Samantha in the chain of command. So chances are, if Enrico wants Ricky to learn something, Enrico would provide that communication to Samantha, and then Samantha would provide that communication to her direct reports as well. So that's the chain of command, and so that let's see, the power or the control, the control would be passed through the chain of command. Okay, all right, and then there's what they call unity of command, and what that means is that if you take a look at this particular drawing, all right, this person only reports to that person. Okay, that's a unity command. This person only reports to the top person. That's unity command. There's no side reporting here or anything, all right? So unity of command is really important. It's only one supervisor who turns in responsible to only one supervisor, and so on up the organizational. And this is really important, especially like in a hierarchical organization where you really need strong command and control. And if you've got unity of command, then you've got a clear view of getting the message down because there's life or property loss or whatever at risk, and you can't afford to fail. Okay. And then span of control. So that's different than unity of command. So span of control is if you take a look at this one, this is a very narrow span of control. So this one manager only has 2 people that report to that one manager, right? And normally, why does this happen? It happens, where there's specialization, or there has to be, a lot more supervisory over the aspect, because it's either like a precision or high risk operation. Whereas a wide span of control, well, if you take a look at a control center, like a CSR, an actual customer center, where you call in, you could have one manager and 100 employees. And what binds the communication? It's the computer, right? It's the digital aspects of being able to really supervise. Like in operators, there's a machine, like a telephone operator. A part of the computer is tracking, well, how quick was that call? How effective was that call? And then a survey to customers would come back and actually show, if that CSR's interaction were good, right? And you can do that with a wide span of control because you've got the capabilities. But if you have something high risk or whatever, if you're monitoring, the installation of a key component on the space shuttle, naturally you're going to have very narrow span of control, and you're going to have very strong, unity command as well going through. Okay, so again, the smaller the organization, chances are, a wider span of control, and that's only in some cases. It's startup, and it's it's an entrepreneurial activity. And if you're into Henry Mintzberg, he calls that an adhocracy. All right, it's a kind of a free for all. Everybody's trying to get the job done, and pay everybody, right? So you can see here, narrow span of control, managers have fewer subordinates. Wide span of control, managers oversee large numbers of subordinates. And again, this SME term, you better learn what it is. There's going to be a few questions that will have SME in it, and you want to know what that is. So that's a small, that's a small, medium enterprise, and the S means a lot of them, right? A tall organizational structure, emphasizes that clear chain of command, distinct layers of management. You'll find that, in the nuclear power business, because of the risk involved. And in a flat organization, you'll find that in, Joey just came up with a smart, a better mousetrap, and he's got 4 people working with him to produce this better mousetrap, and they're just basically getting the job done. And there's no manager other than the owner that's telling them what's going on. Okay, so span of control, that's a number of employees, right? High-level managers have more unstructured problems, therefore have a smaller number of people. So what unstructured problems mean is that, hey, it's a specialization, we haven't done this before, so that we don't know that we don't have a standard method for getting this done. It's unstructured. So chances are, you'll have a shorter span of control, because the expert, is over 1 or 2 people overseeing to make sure that everything gets done. Call center, I talked about, 50 customer service reps, or manufacturing, 40 production workers to 1 manager. Why? Because it's on an assembly line. It's a structured problem. It's all specified. It's all standardized. It's all supported, with digital information and support. So that's where that makes a difference. Again, so you determine the appropriate span for efficiency and effectiveness. That's what that's all about. And again, when you're doing that, you have a preferred management style. And remember, I told you in assignment 2, when you tell me what kind of manager you are, a management style you have, I want you to use those definitions that we've covered, and go from there. Okay, span of control. Yeah, not going to talk about that. But hey, here's something that I learned, is that Genghis Khan was one of the most successful, what's the word, organization in taking on, other countries. And why? Because Genghis Khan understood span of control, and he wouldn't have any kind of platoon more than 10 people for each leader. And that's what drove the success over conquering, other armies and whatever. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So it's not, an early idea. Okay, the formalization, degree to which jobs within the organization are standardized. So I don't know if you've ever worked at McDonald's, but there's a little beep that goes off to tell you when to flip the hamburgers. I mean, that's how formalized and standard, the rules are for production. Formalization is low in unstructured problems. So let me give you a quick example. Is that okay? I did a lot of water treatment as an engineer in nuclear power production, and we had a problem with our ion exchanger. All right. So what did we do? We brought in an ion exchange expert. All right. And that's an unstructured problem. He had to figure out what was wrong. All right. And so that no one told that expert what to do. They just hired him in, and we worked for that expert, and we were doing everything he said that we had to do. All right. So that's what formalization, is very high, when there's unstructured problem, and very low, when it is a structured problem. Okay, so here's something, and this term might come up, right? It's called gangplank, and what it is, it refers to normally in some organizations, a manager, say in accounting, can't talk to a manager in production. And what does that do then? There's this term, it says it silos the organization. So they become insulated, and then because of that, they miss certain things. And what a gangplank says is that anybody in the organization, in one organization, can communicate with the other one in the other, supporting organization. So they can communicate with each other, directly for quick communication. And that's what they call gangplank. And again, too, there's a certain amount of that in the network organization. Anybody can speak to anybody because they're trying to solve a key situation. Here's something that you have to know, Goldner's 3 bureaucratic patterns, and pretty interesting. All right, so a mock bureaucracy is that's rules imposed by outsiders, enforced and often violated. So so what'll happen is the safety people will go in a mine and say, hey, there's no smoking in this mine, and it forces the organization, into a bureaucracy to be able to make sure that no one's smoking that mine. A representative bureaucracy, well, that's a union in management. So the organization leadership can't just do whatever they want with the employees in terms of safety and exploitation. And so the union, through a collective agreement with the management, now have a representative bureaucracy, and the management have to abide to those conditions, to keep everybody safe and in good stead, right? And then punishment centered, and that's when there's enforcement going on, and you penalize things. All right, so you should know what these are, but mainly you can see that this one's highlighted, so that's more important. The McKinsey 7X framework is a model of how an organization can come together. And I'll tell you, I've used this in my consulting and my internal consulting when I worked at TELUS in a big way. It's probably one of the most effective frameworks that I've ever used. And what it does is it's a checklist on doing an internal scan in the organization. By looking at the structure, is the structure proper, for the form of the organization? The function of the organization. Form follows function. Is it responsive enough to what the organization needs to do? Is the strategy good enough? Are the systems that support the employees and the production and everything, are they the right systems? Are they effective enough? The skills are more competencies, because core competencies, people with these specific core competencies give competitive advantage to the organization. So that's really key. And then the style. So depending on the type of organization, what style of management is there? Is it the right one to drive, get the most out of people and make sure that the organization is healthy? And then the staff. Do you have the right staff? Do you have the right people in the right seats doing that? And the shared values is the culture. And by doing this, this is a really good method of doing an analysis, an internal analysis on an organization. Okay, the STAR model, again, this is, another piece. There's 4 areas, of the structure policy, specialization, shape, distribution of power, departmentalization that you look in there. But you take a look at, is the company going in the right direction? Does it have the right structure to execute on that strategy? Are the processes supportive? From a structural and a people point of view, are the rewards in place to motivate the people? So the structure of the organization determines the placement of power and authority in that organization. So again, it's understanding, what needs to get done and how it should be, orchestrated. All right. And that's where, then, where you should have, the right people in terms of, chain of command, a unity of command, span of control, all those things, come down to the placement of power and authority to be able to get to the right structure, that makes the organization work properly. Formalization, we talked about that a little bit. The extent with business processes, policies, and job descriptions are standardized. Centralization and decentralization. This is a conundrum, in most organizations, because if you have too much centralization, then the people in control lose sight of really what the customer wants. If you have too much decentralization, then you can't orchestrate a strategy. So you got to find that right combination of centralization and decentralization to keep the organization effective. And so you can see on a centralized organization, you can see that the message is coming from the top. All right. On a decentralization, you have more organizations working as peers, getting things done. Okay. And just an interesting fact is that I actually worked with, the Gore organization. They made Gore-Tex and all those things, and they were a decentralized organization. But not only that, they emphasized that everyone was, sort of a peer, and they didn't have, like hierarchical titles. They had, functional titles, and that really made the thing work well. And I'll tell you, nothing but great experiences working with, with that organization of Gore in where I was in the power business. Okay. So I told you about centralized organization, greater control over business processes. Biggest drawback, amount of decision time in the decision-making process, because it always has to go all the way back up to the top to get a decision. And here's where we are in today's world. Is think of it as that, the front line of an organization. Those are the people like right aligning with the customer. they're at the at the interface with the customer, and if they can make decisions quicker, well, then they can have better outcomes with the customer in terms of customer service. And so that's a little bit of decentralization, that you could put into empowering these people at the front line to be able to solve problems right away and satisfy customers that converts into loyal customers. Okay. So decentralized, you can see here's a typical decentralized, and this is over, this is a geographical separation of decentralization, where you have regions, all right, and then you have some specialization of finance and then operations. So you can see that it's a little bit of a a hybrid. going forward. Okay, not going to talk about that, but this table is really kind of, if you understand it, it will really kind of give you an idea of the yin and the yang about centralization and decentralization. So so when is it important, for uh, uh, for responsiveness, so decentralization that I talked about, right? Immediacy. But when is it important to have reliability? Well, that's when you need control, right? When is it important to have efficiency? Well, centralization, measures everything and standardizes things, to create efficiency. Um, yeah. So syndication is, everyone, basically comes together. The practice is introduced in every part of the organization, and that's sort of a syndication, right? And then in terms of to have this happen every year on a constant basis, well, it's that if you do that, well, then centralization will make sure that you're on a schedule and that goes that way. All right. So here's another table. When you take a look at decision making, well, one body, I talked about that, decides, so that could be slow. And decentralized management at every level makes decisions for their department, so on and so forth for communication. So here's a piece, and I guess if you really want really good information, I keep on going back to Henry Mintzberg. Uh, he really defined these things really well, and this is sort of the bookends, all right, of organizations. Mechanistic, and that's like fully, that's like a machine bureaucracy. That's like the army, all right. And then organic is like, okay, it's a startup. It's just all over the place, all right. So if you take a look at the variables that affect those structural choices, so if you want this, well, then you do that. So mechanistic organization, tightly controlled, very rigid, high specialization, rigid departmentalization, clear chain of command, narrow spans of control, centralization, high formalization, all the things that we covered up to now. All right. On the organic, some organization like Google, right, where they need creative types, and they can't corral them into trying to think a certain way or whatever. They let them loose. All right. So what you have is a lot of collaboration, both vertical and horizontal. So anybody can talk to anybody to exchange ideas. Adaptable duties, few rules, informal communications, decentralization, a lot wider span of controls, a lot more individual worker autonomy. All right. And so that's what this just said. And then so here, if you take a look at McDonald's, I mean, like I said, everything's run on timers. There's a procedure for everything. Tasks are well defined. Employees follow clear instructions. So formal roles, centralized decisions, standardized processes. Whereas Google, decentralized decision making. The company values creativity and adaptability, allowing for a dynamic and evolving environment. Right. So you have to have those conditions. Right? So the answer on structure is it depends. All right. We talked about types of organizational structure. Functional. Break up a company based on the work specialization. So you have accounting and finance, and you have production, and you have HR, and those are all functional. Divisionals. I talk about that. The team-based group. It serves particular goals and functions. And then a flatarchy, flat organization, large employee autonomy, and then the matrix that I talked about. Okay, so there's 7 basically organizational structures. I'm sure there's more, but that's sort of the conventional ones. And here's the functional structure, marketing, production, sales, human resources. Here's a divisional structure. Well, now this was a geographical one where region A, B, and C. Types of departments. Well, functionals like accounting, product, groups of employees based on major product areas. So, I'm sure Procter and Gamble has, toothpaste is one, and cleaners is another. And sometimes they're customer groups, so certain customers, like maybe wholesale or retail or government. Geographic, I talked about. Process, fine too. So again, Procter and Gamble again, they have a lot of product departmentalization. So here's baby products. They have their own accounting, their own marketing, their own. They're run like a separate company almost. All right, with an overall, grand organizational strategy. The matrix, so this is a better example here of, product manager A might would have somebody from, this would probably, let's say engineering, they'd have an engineer on this particular team that really reported to an engineering manager in this function and reported to the product manager. And that's where you could get, problems. But, like I said, I've worked in good and bad matrix structures. I want you to read a little more about this. And since we're running out of time, I'm kind of going through this a little bit. And a team-based organizational structure. It creates small teams that focus on delivering products and services. I'm just going to take a little drink here. So again, if you take a look at the so-called new organizations like Apple and Google and Cisco, they're more driven by projects than they are with standard like manufacturing of a specific product, because of the nature of their business and the nature of the changes going on. So what happens then is that because you need projects, well, what comes out of projects are teams, right? You have project teams, and it gets back to my point is that you should really consider, if you think you're going to go into like a larger organization, get a PMP certification, a professional project management certification. That'll take you a long way, and it'll give you a whole pile of skills right off the bat. When you start with an organization. The network structure, you could have two or more organizations coming together. Sometimes it's just temporary for a project. Sometimes it's long-term, and it's done because of the specialized capabilities, what I call core competencies that certain parts of the network component organizations can bring to the company itself. Hierarchical, that's the ladder. We talked about that, and then the flat organization. Excuse me. Here's something that's going to be really important, and not only that, it's relevant to question 3 in assignment 2. There's a question about what level of management are you most comfortable in, and I want you to use these, upper management or middle management or lower level management. The reason why this is highlighted is that I just wanted to point out, in the supervisory management, this is essential in the activity. Like, this is where leadership happens. This is where you drive leadership in the 4 functions of management. Where you're intimate with the employees and measuring what they're doing. And that's why this is important. So this is important for this. Question number 3. This is important to understand. Where supervisory management, lower level management resides. Okay, and something to be aware of is that supervisory management or lower level management is the most trusted level of management in the economy in North America, and so that if you're in upper levels of management or middle levels of management, you need to do your best to make sure that these lower level managers are the most, to have the right information, the right authority and accountabilities to be able to make things happen, because that's where the trust is. All right. And we've said this before, people leave their bosses, they don't leave the organization. So the more effective that you can make a lower level management person, the more overall effective the organization will be. Okay. All right. This is the line and staff authority. So you got to know the difference between line managers and staff managers. So a line manager might be, a foreman, on a production line, right? But a staff manager might be, an HR supervisor that, is, has a few HR people working for them. That's a staff manager. There's no, or accounting, right? There's no production involved, but there's a specialization involved, right? Whereas here, this is more of a production oriented, and this is more specialization. Know a little bit about Philip Selznick, and what he did. Know a little bit about, like, fail comes up all the time, and you're going to see this in the test as well, what fail does. So understand that, and maybe take a look at this particular drawing to know what's going on. I'm not going to talk about that. Just so that you know that it's coming, we talked about the value proposition. Now we're going to, in further topics, we're going to talk about the organization's value chain. And one of my heroes here, Michael Porter, out of Harvard, he created this concept of the value chain. And to understand, you can't see the full slide here, but these are primary activities and these are support activities. And this is the main operation, and these support activities, well, it makes sense, right? Human resources will support every organization in those primary activities. And it's all about creating competitive advantage that creates margin. And we're going to get into this a little more, but I wanted you to know about it. Yeah, not too much there. Talk about that. And then there's the circular types of organizations, higher levels employees at the center, and then lower levels at the staff. This way of organizing is intended to encourage, this open collaboration. In today's world, the currency is information, right? And if you can't get information to the right people to do the right things at the right time, well, then you're missing the opportunity. So that's, one of the main reasons for a circular organization. And then the network organization, it's the most prevalent, post-pandemic. I mean, this is driven by global trading. Groups have to get together, to deal in these large supply chains that are global. And the only way to get through that is, it would be almost impossible for one organization to do it all, although Amazon seems to do a good job of that. But, in large supply chains that could have hundreds of participants, the network organization, contractors and third-party vendors and all those things, make this up. And what ties it all together, I'm going to talk about blockchain, but mainly, it's the digital connection. And what blockchain is, it's that a protection of the of the information that flows in cryptology, and the protection of the currency and cryptocurrency, and it's all real time, so everybody can see what's going on, and that's how they can do this amazing, supply chain operation, that runs, globally. Okay, something to know about, what's outsourcing, all right? So what outsourcing is all about is that you build it or you buy it. So if you're going to buy it, that means you're outsourcing. So what happens is that you're in the landscaping business, but you're not an accountant, all right, and you can't do accounting very well. And if you're working on accounting and you can't do it well, you're not working on landscaping and making money for the organization. So what do? You buy that operation, you outsource it to an accounting consultant or firm, and they do the accounting for you. All right. Okay, that's fine. But what comes out of there is that all of a sudden now you don't have complete control of your entire operations, because now you've got an accountant saying, oh, no, you can't do that, or this is the way it has to get done, or whatever. And you have communication issues and you have quality issues, depending on what you've outsourced. But here's one thing to remember out of all this course, right? You never, ever outsource your core competence. Remember I talked about core competence? So for Apple, their core competence is design and marketing. None of that is outsourced. Everything else that they do is outsourced to Foxconn. It's a Chinese organization. They make the machines, they they distribute them, they do all this, but they don't have no idea, how that design is done, and they have no idea, in terms of the channels and how it should be marketed. And what you're doing is, if you outsource, that's a core competency that Apple has. Now, if you outsource your core competency, you're training somebody to compete with you, in the next few months or years. That's what that's all about. So it's all about protecting your competitive advantage. So wanted to share that with you. Okay. I think that's basically all I've covered with you. So we covered a lot of material. I want to take you back to, I'm going to put out an announcement about the test to kind of reiterate what I've covered. I want to emphasize again, it's really important that you work together as best as you can as a team, because that's going to help you when you leave this program, to have those kind of skills, and have those, what I call, the real conversations with people to deal with the issues. You deal with issues quickly. And the key is, the better that you can come together as a team and do these group team participation projects, the better off that you're going to be able to score on your team project, because most of those are going to go from, okay, you did this for Tim Hortons, but now you're doing it for Amazon. And so you're building expertise, and you're improving the quality of your work as you go through. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, please email me. I'd be happy to email you back with the answer. And if I know it's going to help your peers, I will put that on an announcement. Okay. Any questions at all? You can unmute and ask me a question.
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. So again, pace yourself. You should start studying like right now, for that test, and take a look at the path that I gave you to study for that test. Okay? Okay, take care.